You might have seen some of these headlines over the last 24 hours. This is in the New York Times. Faced with criticism, Trump administration reverses abrupt end to humanitarian relief. From WBUR in Boston, which did some of the first reporting on this story. After public outcry, feds agree to reopen certain medical deferral requests. At Commonwealth Magazine in Massachusetts, which also did great reporting on this story from the very beginning, quote, Trump administration changes course on immigrant parents. Those told to leave the country will be allowed to stay for now. But that for now is doing a lot of work there, because even though the Trump administration appears to have caved on this, they appear to have reversed themselves on this. They will at least now consider the applications of kids who are already currently here in this country receiving life-saving medical treatment. They will consider the applications of those kids to stay on, which is a reversal. It appears that the bigger picture of what they're doing here is not so much a reversal of this astonishing policy they were trying to get away with. It appears to be more of just a temporary reprieve to try to cool down the heat of the spotlight that has been burning into them about this over the course of the last week. And, you know, we should have expected that. We have seen this before when it comes to the Trump administration's anti-immigrant policies that they want to crow about to their base for political purposes, but they really don't want to defend on the merits. We saw it, for example, when the Trump administration was initially found to be taking little kids and babies away from their moms and dads at the border, forcibly separating families against their will. You might remember the Trump administration initially claimed that that wasn't their policy at all. Then they admitted, okay, it was their policy, but it wasn't a new policy. Everybody had always done this, hadn't they? Then, in the face of a nationwide convulsion of outrage over their policy, they made a big show of announcing that they were stopping the policy. Well, of course, we've since learned that despite that big showy announcement, and despite court orders telling them that they can't separate kids from their parents anymore, the Trump administration has actually just gone ahead and continued taking little kids away from their families at the border, even to this day. And it looks like that may be sort of what they are trying to pull off with this new announced apparent reversal of their new policy targeting kids with cancer and kids with cystic fibrosis and kids with rare diseases who are undergoing life-saving medical care. The New England chair of the American Immigration Lawyers Association has multiple clients who have been targeted by the Trump administration in this latest dystopian turn. She tells Commonwealth Magazine in Massachusetts today, quote, they created a problem and are now pretending to solve it. They are not solving the problem with this new pronouncement. They are just punting it to be dealt with later. Joining us now is that immigration attorney, Mahsa Khanbabai. Ms. Khanbabai, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you making time to be here.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel, and drawing attention to this.
So we've seen all these headlines suggesting that the Trump administration has backed off, that maybe this was an error, that maybe they didn't necessarily know what they were getting into when they started telling all these families that they were going to have to stop life-saving medical treatment and leave this country. But you're suggesting, at least from the way you understand it, that this may not be a reversal. They essentially may just be sort of hitting pause.
Yeah, definitely. This seems to just be a temporary step back from their policy change, in that they're going to no longer retroactively apply this policy, which is what one would have expected in the first place. But going forward, any application that was filed after August 7th will no longer be accepted or reviewed, and instead they will have to go through the deportation process, as the government, recently stated.
So the people who have been profiled in the press reports about this policy change from the Trump administration, some of them are people who had applied for this status and received this form letter in response saying, no, we're no longer considering that. We can sort of imagine what will happen now that those applications will be reconsidered. But you're saying anybody else who's in this similar situation, who's in this country, who is receiving life-saving medical care here, who can't get that life-saving medical care in another country, while that previously would have been the basis for applying to stay in this country, they're not planning on looking at any of those applications in the future.
Correct, right. So essentially they're continuing with this gratuitously cruel policy. So if someone were to apply on August 8th or today saying, I have a very rare heart condition, for example, like my client, who did not have arteries connecting to her heart and had to come to the United States for this treatment, if she tried to apply today, they would not take her case. And instead, she would have to go into the deportation process, which would use tremendous government resources, from ICE to having to process these individuals to going to an immigration court where they have to see a judge and use the resources of an already overburdened immigration court and the trials court system. And then finally, when they get a deportation order from an immigration judge, only then could they ask the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office, ICE, saying, please don't carry out this deportation order. Let me apply for a stay of my deportation.
Wow. It's, I mean, a very key distinction there, that this is a legal status that is being taken away. These are not people who are here in an illegal status. These are people who have legal status now, and it's being removed, putting them in a totally different part of the enforcement section. Let me just ask you briefly, you mentioned your 14-year-old client there. We talked about her the last time you were here, Ms. Khanbabai. She's 14 years old. She has had heart surgery for this rare condition. She's recovering from that. She's expected to have further heart surgery in the future. Can I just ask what this has been like for her and her family, having received this word that she would have to leave and now going through this apparent reprieve?
Right. They're obviously so thankful that she will no longer have to worry about this in the near future. But we're not sure yet how the government's even going to look at these applications. When they put their statement out, they seemed to bring in a new condition, a higher standard or burden to be met, comparable to what individuals have to do when they're applying for a visitor visa at a U.S. embassy. So frankly, I'm still concerned about how her application and all the others will be looked at.
Mahsa Khanbabai, who's chair of the New England chapter of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, representing several people who have been caught up in this new nightmare from the Trump administration. Ma'am, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Please keep us apprised.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Appreciate it. All right, much more to get to tonight. Stay with us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.